think the censorship issue is existential for this country. We are quickly leaving the journalism age and going into the information age. In the information age, you can decide what information the public is going to get and is not going to get. And what you're seeing is this growing intensity coming out of this virtual handful of companies that are the biggest, most powerful companies in the history of man, where they're deciding what is and what is not going to be allowed to be discussed in the public square. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, these are considered publishers so that they're liable for slander or anything else that happens on their sites. The social media giants got a slippery exception to this, where under Section 230, where they're not considered publishers, they're considered platforms. Therefore, they're not liable for anything that happens on their sites. Well, you take away that protection and make them human beings, as it were, and suddenly they're liable for what they do. And that could change everything. These are monopolies. And as they're constituted right now, you can't compete against them. So they're not only all powerful insofar as politics, but they're all powerful financially as well. Try competing against Apple when it has $1 trillion in cash. You can't. Try competing against Google or Facebook or YouTube. You can't. So if you break them up, you allow competition to enter into the arena. If you have competition, you could have those entities emerge that are going to challenge the leftist orthodoxy. And that could open up possibilities. Why is all this happening? It is because these media giants are in the fact-checking business. They believe that it's their responsibility to fact-check, to make sure that the public isn't told things that it should not be told. Since when was there a market demand for fact-checking? In fact, there has been no market demand ever for these fact-checkers. What if they got out of it? What if they got out of that business, except for opting in, where they allowed you to, as a consumer, be fact-checked if you so chose, and you could choose what entity you wanted to fact-check. I'm simplifying it. There are limits to free speech. Always have been, always will be. You can't scream fire in a movie theater. You can't project egregious criminal activity. You can't promote pedophilia or invite to pedophilia. You can't promote terrorism. There are limits, obviously, legal and civic limits. But other than that, they ought not to be involved. Let the public make that decision. No one's fact-checking the fact-checkers. There is no such thing as objectivity. Unless you've had a frontal lobotomy, you have opinions about everything. And try as you might to keep them in check, your worldview is affected by a bias. It's inescapable. So for someone to come forward and say, I'm an objective fact-checker, is to participate in a dishonesty. Yeah. I think Google is the most dangerous of them all. Where the controversies were Facebook and Twitter, and to some degree YouTube are concerned, it is a controversy as to what level of opinion is allowed. But in the case of Google, it is putting forward what is truth. What it is saying is truth. Now, I was working on a book and doing some research on the Contra War back in the 1980s. I was involved at that time. The radical left attempted to assert that the freedom fighters of Nicaragua, the so-called Contras, were terrorists, and therefore Ronald Reagan was supporting a terrorist operation. And these were the most radical of radicals making that charge. Go on Google today, type in Contra, and what you'll find is one reference after another about them being terrorists supported by Ronald Reagan. The overwhelming percentage of studies, of searches end on the front page. You think you've gotten what you wanted, especially if they all say the same thing on the first page. When you have played with those algorithms, so you can put your ideological preference on that first page, then you really are flirting with a form of totalitarianism in this country. When speech is so manipulated, when you've got Google controls 92% of the search engine business worldwide. You know, people say, well, you can compete against them. Look, Microsoft tried with Bing. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars and got 2% of the market. You can't compete against Google. So when you've got, footage that comes out after the 2016 campaign with an email from the head, the woman running their Hispanic operation, emailing the founder of Google, apologizing for not having delivered the Hispanic vote for Hillary Clinton. And then to have them turn around and say they're objective, that really it is a slap at the intelligence of the American people.
Your head of multicultural marketing said you were pushing to get out the Latino vote, paying for a ride to the polls for the Latino vote only in key states, and you're saying that's not accurate.
Yes, that's right. We haven't found any evidence to substantiate it.
So she just made it up out of thin air the day after the election and wrote this email to your top executives, and it's not true?
Wittingly or not, they are aiding and abetting domestic terrorism. Now, what do I mean by that one? It is the height of hypocrisy that Facebook would remove from its site posts about peaceful gatherings in city squares to call for the reopening of the economy. We're a relative handful. They wanted to go around the courthouse or a flagpole or something with flags of the United States and call on reopening the country. I mean, you can't get more innocent than that. But in wherever it was, Wisconsin or something, some radical left-wing governor said you can't do it, it's against the law. And so Facebook banned it. At the same time, Antifa lives and thrives on Facebook. Antifa, with its riots, with its violence, with its destruction, with its physical assault, with the blood of policemen on their hands. And Facebook allows them on their site. That's freedom, see? But have individuals ask for the country to be reopened? No. That's criminal activity. On this issue, we have to become happy warriors, and we have to promote what it is we believe in and take the fight to the bad guys directly. So I'm not in the business of just documenting and defending conservatives from assaults on the social media giants. I want to take the fight right to them, and we can take the fight right to them. We do have weapons at our disposal. Ultimately, we've got the American people on our side, but that means that the American people have to be active. They have to take a more activist role in the future of this country. And it means understanding that in the information age, information is key. If you cannot have a free flow of information, you can't have a democracy. And that should scare the bejesus out of all of us. You cannot have a functioning democracy if you don't have freedom of speech. And right now we're losing that freedom of speech. Totalitarianism is what follows. And at the end of the day, if we wake up one day and our freedom's gone and you can't win an election because all manner of things have been done to turn the American people unwittingly against you by manipulating truth, and that manipulation continues, we have only ourselves to blame for it. So my message to conservatives is saddle up, because it's a hell of a war we got.